The final thing I wanted to say about orders is it really doesn't make a difference. I mean, we could look at all the different orders, and you could talk about the most popular order of today, the Amorc order. Again, it's basically traces its knowledge back to the ancient mystery schools out of Egypt and even before Egypt. We can look at all the different orders, but they're basically all teaching the same underlying tradition, the underlying esoteric tradition, which is about consciousness, which is about the aspects of humanity, which is about how we should align our will to the will of creation, and how we should basically modify our behavior in relationship to one another and basically to the needs of everyone who is here, and get out of purely selfish, ego-based consciousness, which is what the ascension process and the awakening of humanity is all about. So I have also taken a look at some of the writings of Beverly Hall, their works. They have an excellent library. They put out excellent books, too, for people to get into. So I can recommend that through an individual that I know who has experience with them. As I said, they are the real deal, and they are definitely teaching the true Rosicrucian tradition. So
is
I
your
like
friend
that
a
they
member?
don't discriminate with a lot of these groups now. Do not discriminate between the sexes, and it is open to all, not like Freemasonry, which I think in a very outdated way still admits only men and has a separate order known as the Eastern Star for its women initiates. I definitely think that's a form of segregation that we could do without, and people need to come together as one, regardless of age, sex, creed, social status, or any of those things that divide us and put walls up between us, to come together for this tradition, the teachings of these traditions, which are timeless and should not be segregated according to any perceived differences between humanity.
Yes. Now the two orders that you brought up are the primary orders in America: the Fraternitas Rosicrucis, which is the authentic Rosicrucian fraternity, the Beverly Hall, which we were speaking of, that, like you said, still publishes under the Philosophical Publishing Company, and they have put out the mammoth amount of works out there regarding
their library
Rosicrucian.
is huge. Yes.
And I bet you possess almost all these books, don't you, Mark?
Actually, I do not. No. It's something. It's some of them I do want to get my hands on, and probably am going to attempt to do that again through the connection that I have with that order.
This was
I don't have many. I have many digital books on this topic that I have gone through. As far as finding physical copies of them, I have a few, but not as many as one might think. I do a lot of digital reading, so I do have a ton of them loaded on the devices that I have as EPUB ebooks or as PDF documents. And again, I make a lot of them available with the drive full of knowledge that I make available. I've announced that on my show a couple of times, and on other shows I put out a 1 terabyte drive to people who basically send me a drive, and then I fill it up with a terabyte of information, and there's a ton of Rosicrucian documents on that drive.
Yes, the ARC that you offer on your site, whatonearthishappening.com. And so if people are interested in your collection of knowledge, you very kindly put it on or they send you the drive still? Do they still send you the drive and you place all the information on it?
That's right, and send it back, yes. And it's information that I've been amassing basically since I've been online, which is, almost 20 years now. And I've been searching for this information and amassing it and digitally assembling it and backing it up. And I have a tremendous collection of digital information in my home, and I attempt to share that as widely and as freely as possible so that people can also benefit from it and help to change their consciousness and the consciousness of others as a result of integrating that knowledge into themselves.
Right. And we appreciate it, Mark. Now the Rosicrucian order that your friend is a part of or familiar with up there, like you said, yes, just out of Quakertown, PA, a very interesting little collection of buildings dotted with pyramids, small pyramids around the property, and this was the home of the Rosicrucian order, Beverly Hall, etc., philosophical publishing, etc. But this is the famous, I should say, infamous Rosicrucian sect that Bill Cooper spoke about in the Mystery Babylon series. And as you know, Mark, he took a kind of a dark take on it, and I myself would easily take a darker take on it, but for you in my world, who very kindly are trying to share with me and others that of occultism, there is a light occultism and a dark occultism, and I am very thankful that tonight is the light the light aspect. There is so much darkness that you're right, we don't need to focus too long on it. However, in one of the works, Bill Cooper, well, what I should say, though, is to preface it, is that the order itself was founded on the teachings of Dr. Paschal Beverly Randolph of Beverly Hall fame. And he is a very interesting character, as I'm sure you're aware of, Mark, turn of the century, he was mistaken for a black man. However, he had a very, heterogeneous lineage, to politely put it. He was comprised of all different segments of the world's populace, and so he was easily mistaken for, quote, a black man. And in the mid-1800s, it was kind of tough to be an intellectual black man and to try to share your work. And one of his more interesting works had to do with sex magic. And at the time, in the that was just like, way unheard of. I mean, one of his contemporaries was Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky of Theosophy, and she had nothing nice to say about Dr. Paschal Beverly Randolph. But what I think is really interesting, even to this day, the website of this Beverly Hall organization of Rosicrucians can be found under www.soul.org, O-R-G as in George. And in the preface of it, of the website, they mention that Dr. Randolph and also another Rosicrucian named Hitchcock or something like that. But the other founding council member was Abraham Lincoln, who was a friend of Dr. Randolph's and a founding member of this Rosicrucian order of the council. And I think that is amazing and unheard of. In fact, Dr. Randolph, to connect it, Dr. Randolph was one of the funeral cortege riders in the train to carry Lincoln's body to its final burial place. At one stage, he was asked by a very rude member of the party to leave the train because he was, quote, black. And he very politely left the train, not as to cause a commotion. Back to you, Mark.
It's amazing. When you look into history, you will find that so many influential people had connections with occult orders and were occultists themselves. So they know how powerful this information is. They know that it's all about how the universe really works, And the final thing I'd just like to say about the Beverly Hall order is I have perused some of their materials, and I have looked at the library that they're making available. And from the information that they are putting out, it's difficult for me to accept that information is being used in a dark, occult way, because it is of very high consciousness, so far as I can tell from having looked at it. And it definitely corresponds with attempting to communicate natural law principles to people. So my friend is also very wary of anything that would be used for dark purposes and is of high consciousness. And I don't believe that he would get involved with a group that was looking to subvert human consciousness and put us into deeper bondage. So, that's what I'll say about that. Again, I'm not a member of any esoteric order. I consider that I am a member of the Order of Truth that has nothing to do with any physical lodge or physical individuals. That's a force that I choose to align my own consciousness with and then attempt to communicate the knowledge that is gained from that alignment to other people so that they can also make that same alignment with that force of creation. So that's who I swear my allegiance to no earthly organization or group. With that having been said, I think, we've covered the order aspect of it. Let's take a look at now some of the deeper teachings through the allegories. And the first thing is the allegorical founder of Rosicrucianism, Christian Rosenkreutz, or R.C. Christian, as he is often known as. Yes.
Do you feel that you're missing out, and this is a question I've been wanting to ask you, do you feel that you're missing out on pertinent information by excluding yourselves from all of these orders and initiatory organizations?
I do not, because first of all, if your consciousness is expanded and you are in connection with and alignment with the spirit of truth, you don't need to go into any particular church. You don't need to go into any particular building or make any particular association with a group. This is an individual connection that is forged one-on-one with the divine itself, with that divine force, regardless of what you happen to think of that force or power as. And that is the connection to the higher self. That is the connection to the power of creation itself. I don't believe that any particular earthly path or any particular earthly affiliation is necessary to forge that connection. That is our birthright as beings that exist in this creation. And that can be done by everyone who expands their consciousness and exerts their will enough to make that, to forge that connection on a one-to-one basis. That's my answer to that.
Thank you, Mark. And I step back with that answer. Thank you, sir.
So let's look at Christian Rosenkreutz, okay? This is the allegorical founder of the Rosicrucian tradition, okay? And the name tells the message. He is Christian Rosenkreutz, Christian Rose Cross, okay? Some people will say Christian RC, or they'll put the RC at the beginning and say RC Christian. For those of you who may be familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, which I do believe are works of dark Rosicrucianism, the individual who erected that monument was named R.C. Christian. This is a direct allusion to the allegorical founder of Rosicrucianism, Christian Rosenkreutz. So this was a tongue-in-cheek message encoded into the Georgia Guidestones, and I do not believe it was done by a light Rosicrucian, and I'll just leave that at that. So Christian Rosenkreutz is not an actual historical figure. He is an allegorical founder because he is the soul who has set off onto the journey for truth and higher consciousness. He is the archetypal entered apprentice or initiate into the tradition of higher knowledge, okay? He represents the desire to go forward. He represents the spirit of evolutionary progress in consciousness, okay? He is the force of evolution. He is also the generative principle, okay? The thing that is driving evolutionary progress is ultimately what we care about. We're in a stage now of epigenetic evolution. That means beyond the physical, beyond the genes or the genetic, the physical aspects of evolutionary movement, okay? We are at the point where now the decision that needs to be made is ours as to how we are going to progress in our evolutionary development. Are we going to willfully align ourselves with the forces of nature, with natural law? Are we going to willfully align ourselves to right, willfully align ourselves to morality and conscience, okay? And therefore turn ourselves through an act of our own will into conscious co-creators of our reality. Because we're always co-creating our reality, whether we know it or not. Most of us happen just to be unconscious of it because we haven't decided to take on the personal responsibility of using our will power, okay, to take on the knowledge of right and wrong, to take on the knowledge of natural law and align ourselves with it and then make the reality that we want to see happen for ourselves by choosing, willfully choosing, the right action over the wrong action. Too many of us want to abandon that personal responsibility and hand it off to another, that we just listen to and follow them, and therefore we're not really exercising conscience. Therefore, we're not really aligning ourselves with natural law, and therefore we're not really co-creating our reality with the force of consciousness itself, with the force of truth and natural law itself.